In the early morning of September 10th, 2010, the final stages of Operation Cobalt were enacted, a contingency plan to bomb most major metropolitan cities in America. Most of these cities were completely lost and would fall to the dead in time anyway, all except 3: Portland, Omaha, and Philadelphia, which would form the largest coalition in North America, the Alliance of Three. Although the survivors of Omaha and Portland would rebuild over time following the chaos, Philadelphia had a different story. When the orders for Operation Cobalt were given, the Pennsylvania National Guard defied the federal government and stood their ground against the oncoming bombs. Stationing themselves in Philadelphia, a full-on war would break out between the Pennsylvania National Guard and U.S. Air Force. As the fighting continued, Marines would be stationed in Lincoln Financial Field and would wait to move out to liquidate any survivors. But in a twist of fate, this would not happen. As a pilot for the U.S. Air Force, Donald Okafor would have a change of heart. You see, Okafor had just finished dropping napalm on Atlanta and Los Angeles, and was instructed to do so on Philly next. But after seeing the devastation, could not continue with his orders, along with his wife Estelle, stationed among the Marines. So as an act of sacrifice, Okafor would bomb Lincoln Financial Field, killing 4,000 Marines, including his wife, but would save the city of Philadelphia. Any survivor present in Philly at this time would either stay put and look to the Pennsylvania National Guard for leadership, or flee the city and attempt to start a new life somewhere else, such as the case of Dave and Tony in The Walking Dead Season 2, who claimed to have seen the fighting going down in Philly before leaving. Following Operation Cobalt, the city would have been reclaimed by the soldiers, but what's interesting is that the National Guard would eventually allow the city to govern itself, or at least the smokescreen of autonomy. In reality, the military dictated how things would run inside the city and out, without the leadership of Philadelphia ever knowing. Over in Nebraska, survivors were not as lucky as Operation Cobalt laid waste to their major cities, including Omaha. However, evident from the same conversation between Dave and Tony in Season 2, rumors had sprung up of trains shipping people off to the state in mass, as it had a low population and high amount of guns. Turns out, those rumors were true. Well, at least they would make the most sense, as the writers seem to be pulling a lot these days from that conversation in Season 2.
I hear Nebraska's nice.
As we see Omaha repopulate itself with over 100,000 survivors by the year 2020, and erect a massive wall around the city. They kept in direct contact with a separate colony of 10,000 survivors in Nebraska State University, known as the Campus Colony, which was formerly a safe zone set up by the military during Operation Cobalt. Most survivors in the Campus Colony would have been evacuees from Lincoln, Nebraska in the early days, in which the community eventually acted as a satellite keeping connection between the Alliance of Three, including Portland. Now, Portland had a similar story as Omaha, burning in the flames of the Sunset Protocol, but would not have survivors shipped out to them, as the entire West Coast was overrun. So it's safe to assume most survivors in Portland were residents of the city in the pre-apocalypse. They were able to build a giant wall much like Omaha, protecting them from the hordes of the undead, and allowing them to survive into the post-apocalypse. At some point following Operation Cobalt and the reclamation of Philly, the Pennsylvania National Guard would reform themselves into the Civic Republic Military, led by Major General Beale, followed by the city reforming into the Civic Republic of Philadelphia. However, in time, the CRM would not remain exclusive to the Pennsylvania National Guard, as we see unaffiliated Old World Marines such as Huck join in the coming years. At some point in these early days, the CRM would begin surveying the American wasteland, as contact had been lost with every corner of the country following the Sunset Protocol, using helicopters and other air vehicles that were still in their arsenal. Through the ashes, the CRM would discover both Omaha and Portland survived on their own, and would soon form a network between the three cities, known as the Alliance of Three, using a 3-ring symbol between the settlements to show unity. However, with the Civic Republic military possessing far more advanced weaponry and technology, a disproportionate power dynamic would begin to form across the Alliance. The CRM would become hyper-paranoid about safety and would hide the location of the Civic Republic from the other 2 cities, dubbing Philadelphia the Hidden City, as the CRM would exterminate any survivor who would even come close to it, regardless of affiliation with the Alliance. This power imbalance would eventually even extend to the city itself, as the military had a strict no-leaving policy for the regular civilians within Philly. And over time, more and more secrets would be kept from the Civic Republic leaders. One of these secrets was the division of A's and B's. You see, the CRM would begin contacting smaller settlements across the wasteland, I'm talking like 50 people max, and propose a trade deal in which the CR would provide food and supplies in exchange for survivors under different classifications. The primary example of this being Jadis and the Junkyard group from The Walking Dead Season 7 and 8, who, according to interviews from showrunners, treated Heath from Alexandria, who went missing mysteriously from the Coalition, much like Rick Grimes. This would be done as a control tactic, as Bs would be seen as people who were weak or would conform to the leadership of someone else. They would be assigned as consignees and would work on the outskirts of Philadelphia for up to 6 years, calling the dead, in hopes of being granted citizenship within Philadelphia. While A's were leaders, people who could influence others to change how the CRM works. Of course, you can't have that when forming a dictatorship, so A's would be shipped off to the CRM facilities across the country and experimented on, and eventually killed. All in secret from the Alliance. Entire research facilities equipped with scientists would perform all kinds of experiments on these unfortunate souls, most of which to find a way to speed up the decomposition process within walkers, and discover the most effective way to call the dead. The CRM would set up outposts all across the country intended as halfway points for their missions to refuel and resupply what they need. In some instances on their missions, survivors in the wasteland would discover them and what they were up to. Soldiers were given strict orders to exterminate anyone who would know too much, as seen in the later seasons of Fear the Walking Dead. But not all soldiers are robotic killing machines. We see in Fear a soldier named Isabel defy her orders and not kill Althea. In fact, they start a relationship, something which evidently isn't allowed with people outside of the CR. The loyalty of the average soldier is a bit unclear, as Isabel claims to have to kill Al to keep the CRM a secret, but then also calls upon a helicopter pilot to rescue some of the survivors of Teddy's nukes in Texas, leading her to be on the run from the CRM going forward. It's weird that a soldier's loyalty can be swayed completely by one kiss, but that could just be the Fear writers not knowing what's going on as usual. Regardless, the Civic Republic military had America in its grasp, and was determined to reshape the country the way they saw fit, regardless of any objections from the Alliance of Three. This eventually would lead to the CR recruiting survivors of the Alliance to be facility workers, people who would tend to giant walker culling facilities, cleaning out bodies, protecting the exterior, setting up explosives, and watching the show every single night. Rinse and repeat the next day. They wear the same type of jacket as consignees, so it's assumed this is just another way to eventually earn citizenship within the Hidden City. It's clear the CRM's end goal was to exterminate all walkers across the continent, but little to the Alliance's knowledge would extend to become much more sinister later down the line. As the years went on, the brutality of the Civic Republic military grew, as they would basically begin playing God, determining who and what constituted a threat. One of the leaders of the CRM to exponentiate this descent into brutality was Lieutenant Colonel Elizabeth Kublik, who ordered Lila Belshaw, a CRM scientist under the command of Major General Beale, to experiment with A's traded from across the wasteland, and outspoken defectors of the Alliance, to find a way to slow down and eventually stop the reanimation process, in an operation known as Project Votus. Lila Belshaw developed an intracerebral injection of algae-derived chemical extracts that she would then use to develop a variant of chlorine gas. This is where the true evil of the CRM comes to light. 8 years after Monument Day, the CRM's modeling revealed the Alliance of Three was too heavy a strain on the CR's resources, and would not become self-sustaining in time before famine and disaster would hit, leading to the collapse of the Civic Republic. Major General Beale ruled Campus Colony, Omaha, and Portland all as threats to their new civilization. So 2 years after this revelation, the first stage of removing these threats from the equation was initiated: infiltration. Jennifer Malik, or Huck, was the daughter of Lieutenant Colonel Elizabeth Kublik, and was trusted to gain intel within Omaha and Campus Colony as a way to atone with the CRM for a past mistake. She was to determine when and where would be the best time to strike, which she decided would be Monument Day in the city squares, as most citizens would be gathered in celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the dead walking the earth. But this would see a slight change of plans as Hope Bennett was discovered to possess knowledge that could be an asset to the CR. So Huck sent her on a mission to a research facility in New York State, under the guise of her scientist father being in danger, and removed her and the Endlings from what would be the hot zone in the coming days. Finally came the Day of Judgment. In the days following Monument Day, Omaha would see CRM helicopters fly over their heads as celebrations continued in parks and plazas, and in a single attack began dropping bombs of chlorine gas on the unsuspecting citizens, eventually leaving absolutely no survivors out of the 100,000 within the walls. But the CRM wasn't finished yet. Campus Colony in the following days would once again see helicopters fly over their heads before dropping bombs of chlorine gas all the same, all throughout the university walls, killing an additional 10,000 people inside.
Jesus Christ.
The CRM would then lead a mega horde to the settlement's walls and blow them open over the following days, framing the massacre as an accident caused by the dead. What's interesting is that we see a soldier named Barca show remorse for what they did and is accordingly arrested, taken away, and killed in Lila Belshaw's experiments. Clearly, they have a zero-tolerance policy for weakness in their soldiers. As the Campus Colony was effectively a relay satellite, 87,000 civilians within Portland would not receive word of the massacres, leaving them unprepared for an attack that was to come for them next. However, this would not happen, as the plans of the genocide were discovered by the Endlings, and the CRM's plans were thwarted as Huck blew up the culling facility, storing the chlorine gas intended for Portland, and sacrificed her life as a way to atone for her part in Omaha's doom. Some of the remaining Endlings would make their way to Portland at the end of World Beyond, and presumably warn them of the CRM's betrayal, but the consequences of this revelation have yet to be seen. Now, one character I've barely touched on in this video is Jadis, the woman who traded Rick Grimes. Jadis's history with the CRM is shrouded in mystery. All we know is that she knew about the Hidden City and actively worked with the military to trade people for supplies. But after trading Rick Grimes, who later was seen as an asset by a higher power, Jadis was promoted within the ranks of the military and began her journey of backstabbing to climb higher. Jadis was actually the person to kill Huck herself, and in her final breaths, planted seeds of doubt in Jadis's head on her mother, Lieutenant Colonel Kublik's loyalty to the CRM. Jadis from here puts 2 and 2 together and realizes Kublik's intent of bringing her into Project Votus was to take the fall if things went wrong, which they did. Surprisingly, Major General Beale believes Jadis when approached, and promptly had Elizabeth Kublik arrested for treason. I assume he probably already had eyes on her, putting Jadis in an even higher place of power within the CRM. In The Ones Who Live, we are shown propaganda news broadcasts that state the Alliance of Three is now an Alliance of Two, as Omaha had fallen to a herd of walkers, according to the military. It's clear through these events the CRM wants to not only be the strongest superpower on the planet, but the only superpower, as the Alliance of Three collapses. The CRM may be the strongest military force on the planet by now, but is not invulnerable to dissent. As we see in The Ones Who Live episode 1, Okafor plants the seeds of change in Rick Grimes' head, believing he and Pearl Thorne are the leaders needed to make real change. However, Okafor is killed in the same episode, so only time will tell where this plotline is headed. The last thing I want to talk about is Major General Beale's elite squad. These are soldiers dressed in red stripes and carry out orders from Beale, even other soldiers are unaware of. These guys will definitely be fleshed out more as The Ones Who Live airs, but all we know according to Rick himself, the soldiers leave and come back covered in blood. We see in World Beyond the regular soldiers were present during the campus colony genocide, so it can't be that. One can only imagine the horrors Major General Beale has these red striped soldiers commit in the name of the Civic Republic. The endgame of the CRM has already been set up in World Beyond, as they want to reclaim the country from the dead completely, but their methods in doing so are what should be questioned, as it's clear even super colonies won't stand in their way. And that, folks, for the most part, is everything we know about the origins of the CRM and fall of the Alliance of Three. Obviously in the future we're going to learn more about the CRM, so I'll be sure to do a volume 2 when the time comes. If you like this video, please be sure to hit that like button and drop a sub if you're feeling generous. The support on the last few videos has been absolutely insane, so I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for watching.